Welcome to Faith in the Game, the podcast where faith meets the field and the heart behind the hustle takes center stage. I'm your host, Judy Ingram, and each week I will sit down with current and former college athletes who are living out their faith while competing at the highest levels. We'll talk about their journeys on and off the field, their testimonies, trials, and how Christ shapes who they are as student athletes. Let's get into today's conversation and see how God is moving through faith and the game. In this 8th episode of Faith in the Game, I'm joined by Micah Bailey, a former tennis player at Quinnipiac, class of 2014. Micah reflects on his journey at Quinnipiac, the dedication it took to reach the collegiate level, and the profound transformation he experienced in his life after college. He shares how his faith deepened, how God reshaped his purpose, and how he now uses testimony to mentor youth, lead with intention, and live in a way that glorifies God. Micah's story is a powerful example of living with purpose and serving others through faith.
Thank you so much for being open for me to talk to you about this. It's been a really beautiful journey. You're actually my last person that I have for this capstone that I'm doing. And it's just been so fun seeing all the student athletes' testimonies, how God really has helped them in their sport and just them as a person. I think you're really interesting because I want to do postgraduates as well, just to see life after the sport. Yep. And I mean, not saying you're old, but it's you're you were a lot after than
yeah.
So I feel like you have a really good mindset of what it's really like, and also talking to other younger athletes. So just to start off, just taking you back, why tennis out of all the sports for you to play?
Yeah, for me, tennis started out when I was 3 years old. It's just in my family. My dad, even his dad, my grandfather was Connecticut state champ, little flex, but even though it had nothing to do with that, obviously. So yeah, it was my dad's career. Even he's 75 this year and he's still coaching tennis. It's just been in the family. And I grew up playing other sports as well, but that was the one I ended up gravitating towards. And I think seeing the opportunity to play in college, and it was always the goal, to play Division I, and yeah, Quinnipiac was kind of that perfect sweet spot.
Yeah. So how did the recruitment process work for you when choosing to go to Quinnipiac?
Yeah. So I had applied to probably 10 different schools. Most of them were in Florida, only 2 up north. And my dad had actually known the coach just from being in the industry, Mike Quitko, rest in peace. He passed, I think, just last year, the year before. And yeah, he we eventually met him, and it was a good fit. I fell in love walking the campus as most of us do. And yeah, it was pretty straightforward. There was a spot, and I was able to fit kind of right in. Yeah.
Was there any culture shock for you moving from Florida to Connecticut?
Good question. I would say, so obviously Miami is very diverse. And so I was actually surprised at how diverse Connecticut was. I hadn't, I have family throughout New England, but never really spent time seeing Connecticut. And I was surprised at, the amount of diversity throughout Connecticut. But culture shock was just, I think, yeah, Miami's very loud and busy, and coming to quiet little Hamden, sure, definitely Quinnipiac's its own little bubble. And so I think that was, I felt it felt safe. So
yeah. And also, how about your transition from high school tennis to playing Division I tennis?
Yeah. So obviously, as a tennis player, I don't know how many other sports work, but as in tennis, you're playing, middle school, high school, for your school. But of course, you're playing USTA tournaments all along. You're all the time probably playing 2 to 4 tournaments, a month, just driving hours on the weekend to compete and build your ranking, because chances are, if you're serious about tennis and playing Division I, you're not coming to a Division I school having just oh, I was captain of my high school team. Like
Yeah.
you don't really see that happen. So, yeah, so, obviously like, Florida, Southern California, Texas are like the biggest, most competitive tennis beds in the country. And I don't know about other sports, but probably pretty similar, just being the biggest states. And so, it was very competitive. In high school, obviously high school, even just in Miami, all those high schools had good teams. And so, obviously I was thinking, didn't go crazy thinking about college in middle school or anything, but
Okay.
like, right, like some parents, put that in their kids a little early. But I think, we had a healthy respect for it. My dad, being my coach, was wasn't like pressuring me at all to start looking at colleges too early. But I think it was around sophomore, junior year, maybe. Probably junior year, and when we started talking colleges. And of course, yeah, the goal was D1. Like, it wasn't, I don't think at any point I was like, I'm good with D3 or
Hey.
D2. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I just, being competitive, setting a high bar. And yeah, that's it. Tried to build up that ranking as best as possible. I was never like top 10 in Florida or anything like that, but we got, you know, decent enough to have conversations with college coaches. So it was cool.
So for you, what is it like playing a sport where it's all on you? It's not like a team effort. It's like any mistakes or any greatness. That's all on you. What's it like with that type of pressure?
Yeah, no, awesome question. It's, tennis is one of those few sports.
Yeah.
Um, and I could go so many directions, but it obviously, it obviously builds up character. I think it builds up a strength that, like, you first of all, I think the first thought I have is, win or lose, you can't blame anyone else. And it's like, you can't blame anyone else. Also, you can be proud of yourself, because like, that's you. Like, you don't have to give the credit. So in a way it's selfish, but in a way it's also like, you have to own your loss just as much as you get to own your win, in a way. um but it's funny now, as like a Christian, and even those words, like, oh, taking the credit for yourself, and
Yes.
it's like really weird to say that. But like, that was sort of, a realization as a tennis player. I was a soccer player before, and like, coming from a team sport to a single player sport. My mom always wanted me to play a team sport. She enjoyed that atmosphere more. And yeah, I think I like the competitive nature of having to figure it out myself, as a tennis player. And then just like, yeah, battling head to head, like, it's you versus me. It definitely brought out that competitive nature. And yeah, there's so many like lessons in tennis that apply to life. Like, we could sit here for hours just to really like unpack that, but yeah.
Yeah, and love that you talk about being a Christian, kind of good segue into your faith journey. How did that start? Was it just you were young, always went to church, came later in life? What was that?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, grew up going to church with my family, a Christian church. Knew right, knew of God, believed in God, but didn't know God, is sort of how I always say it to people. And just like being honest, even as I look at like my parents' relationship with God, all those years, it's like, I think their intention was to have that foundation in our lives, but it was never, it was like, show up, serve once in a while. We're
Yeah.
in some Christmas, Christmas services, like, I was probably a wise man one day, like,
Yeah.
a 5-year-old, whatever. But like, never, didn't know God, didn't know what Jesus did for us, didn't really truly understand the gospel, didn't know what the good news was like. So, obviously, that that led me to living, in the world, very much in the world, in Miami, all the way into college. And even my mom, as I went away to college, right, being a mom was like, hey, like try to go to church once in a while, like, and there is one up like, near Dick's, Dickerman's, like the congregational church up there. My mom was like, there's a nice church right there, like you should go once in a while. And I just never did in college. It wasn't on my mind. But I always knew, like I always knew God was with me, and that was probably all it was. I wouldn't say I even had like a prayer life, or anything like that. So yeah, unfortunately, but it's all part of the story now.
Yeah, so what was the shift? When did you finally truly take it for yourself and truly
Yeah.
decide, okay, this is my time to actually truly know who God is?
Yeah. Yeah, so that finally came mid-20s. I was about 25 years old. And really just long story short, right? Like so many people have different testimonies. Mine, I gave my life to Jesus out of like desperation. I was in a crisis that I could not see my way out of. And it brought me to my knees, as my mom once said, even like, it sort of leveled my family even, and it was really big. And I had a whole career shift. I had to move apartments. My family even moved to Connecticut. Like it was a very significant situation that I couldn't get out of it myself. I couldn't keep the world up, in my own hands, and that's what it felt like. And so I was obviously doing life without seeking the Lord, and found myself in some such like tragic situations, and and so yeah, it's funny, one of those big things was that I lost my job like suddenly, right? And that was when God opened my eyes to seeing like how present he was in that. And I really, I wasn't going to church in my early 20s. Once in a while, here and there, there's a church on the green in New Haven that I would pop into once every few months. I was living in New Haven at the time. I was working at Channel 8, and I lost my job suddenly, and everything kind of came crashing down. And so at that point, like I started seeing the bumper stickers like for this, for Vox Church, but it was called City Church at the time. And I mean, even my neighbor had a bumper sticker, which that would have been there like before all that happened with me, but I just didn't see it. It's like, wow, like how much was I not seeing like of God's hand everywhere until like he really opened my eyes, and it was when I needed it most. And yeah.
Is there any like prayer you kept praying or like a scripture, anything that like this is God telling me this?
Yeah, I mean, Genesis 50:20, what the enemy meant for evil, God uses for good. Psalm 23 I have tattooed on my wrist here is, obviously has been a staple. I realized even as I was growing in my faith that was like a staple verse for my grandfather. He like, World War II, he would like be reading that like in war, and like like, and so there's some significance to that verse for our family and everything too, and even for my dad. But yeah, I mean, even my knowledge of like the word, right? I started going to church, and I wasn't spending time reading scripture until like a year or so, and maybe I started finally like spending time in his word, and everything. So but yeah, I mean, as far as scriptures go, like probably that first one that came to mind, Genesis 50:20, spoke to me.
So after Channel 8, what was the next career path for you?
Yeah, um so it was 2 years or so. So COVID came around. So yeah, it was 2018 when I lost my job, and COVID came around 2020. And so part of the situation involved a lawsuit. I had to file a lawsuit against the TV station, and so COVID came around, and it slowed down that process, and The whole time I'm like looking for like legit jobs, like of course, but you know, everything was crazy in my life, and then COVID, and so it slowed down the legal process. I yeah, I couldn't actually find a legit job that was like in my field that I, you know, knew I could do. So I was just like picking up random little things. I was teaching tennis, you know, and struggling, like truly struggling. Like I was, you know, staying with my family, which you know, I look back and that's, you know, obviously a blessing to be able to do. You know, but I was not I was not okay. I was not okay. You know, I was struggling with, you know, my mental health really bad, and then financially, of course, too, you know, and you know, the lawsuit cost so much money that, you know, we did not have. I'm constantly looking for work, and you know, I even picked up a job as a like a male nanny for a family in Greenwich, like during COVID, you know, and I'm like, hey, I'm willing to do whatever. They're paying cash, and I'm like, this kid needs a male role model, apparently, according to the description that my mom literally sent me on Craigslist. And I'm like, are we serious right now? I'm gonna go be a nanny, okay, you know, and so yeah, I mean, but even in that, like God was in it. God was in it, like, you know, and you know, he was doing other stuff too. I started like, yeah, I didn't have like consistent work, so I I saw that time as like an opportunity to finally pursue what I had always backburnered, which is, you know, a passion for like, you know, like acting and film. And so, you know, I took that time in 2019 to start taking acting classes, you know, and I was just like, I don't know what's gonna come of this, and but I got the time, and I'm, you know, if not now, then when,
Yeah.
kind of thing. I'm like, if the Lord has put this on my heart for, you know, so long, like, you know, and it hasn't gone away, then, you know, there's something here to explore. So, was I think was my thinking. So, yeah, spent some time just learning a bit about that. A couple doors opened, got involved in a few projects, did a couple of, you know, films, short films and feature films, and yeah, that was clearly blessed. You know, it was, you know, God's hand for sure. But financially still struggling until I found a job at a real estate company. I started learning about real estate um probably like mid 2020, again during COVID, and actually a guy that went to Quinnipiac that I didn't really know well, but I just knew of him, was hiring, and I was following him on social media, and I started like first week of January in 2021. But it was a fully commission based job, a skill set that I did not have, acquisitions for real estate, and like, you know, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, this is something, and maybe there's some upside here. So pretty much learned real estate, didn't earn a dollar for 4 months, and just trusting the Lord, like that was a leap of faith, going from like, okay, I'm getting some cash every week as a nanny, but like let me leave this to potentially seek this other opportunity. And so that is what started the next chapter, which is now real estate. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I would say that's a lovely like transition from like TV, film,
yeah,
real estate, like that.
yeah, yeah. And
So,
I've heard other people doing like making that transition. Even it's like pretty common.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So did you, kind of going back to your college days, did you know like after college you didn't want to do anything else with tennis, or that's just so what happened when as you like graduated?
Good question. My dad always like people would always ask him, so is he gonna follow in your footsteps and, you know, be a pro, you know, coach? And he's like, no. My dad was always like, no, he's got bigger ambitions or bigger plans, you know, whatever, a bigger calling. You know, I saw it always as like, uh, it's always like a B, C plan, backup. Like, hey, if I have to, I can. You know, it's, you know, and you can make good money if you really like devote, you know, to it. But no, I saw it as more like, hey, like this is like a summer gig if, you know, if needed, side gig if needed. Um, but I love it, you know. I still love to play. I get out every as often as I can. Um, and And yeah, so I taught some tennis at Dartmouth College in the summers during college, a couple summers after college even. So it was like, it's good. And even when I lost my job at Channel 8, like I was able to lean back on that, and I worked at Dartmouth for that summer camp that summer. So it's like it's always just it's there, if I need it, which is nice.
Nice. So like with that low point you had losing your job, what was like one of the biggest lessons you think God was really trying to tell you in that time?
Man,
I'm sure there's many, but you know.
yeah, the biggest. All right, I guess what's the first thing that comes to mind? Um, hmm. Yeah, I think that it was just that I couldn't do life without him, you know. Yeah, and that I finally saw, like I finally got to experience, I guess, the result or the outcome of doing life my way. And my way didn't work. And this is what I tell some people as I share my testimony. And it's we have a choice. We have a
Yeah.
choice. And
Mhm.
and I did it my way. I did it my way, and I fell and I failed and I got hurt. And you know, and yeah, it got dark. It got dark. I had like hatred in my heart, and that's just not me. And so really, like, you know, the Lord brought me through all of that to just to remind me that he was there all along. And yeah, and then and that I couldn't possibly continue on without him.
And so now after that, really growing your faith, what are you doing now, like with the church? Like what's like some of the things you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really cool. So I started, 2018, going to Vox a month after I lost that job. And I can tell you that story because it's a cool one. But um, you know, Father's Day of 2018, my dad and I walk in the doors at Vox on Father's Day, and didn't know what to expect. It was different than any church we'd ever experienced, but like that was it. Started coming back every weekend, and so, just the progression sort of like to today from then, was like, first year and a half, I tell people you wouldn't call me dead standing in the lobby, like talking to anyone after church service. Like I would show up, get get what I needed, and then I'm out. And obviously that I realized like the enemy loves to work in isolation. And so I was very much isolating myself. Um, and I felt like my battle was so private and like shameful and everything that like it kept me in that isolation. And uh so, first year and a half, I think I started serving on production, probably 2019, like so maybe a year or so after I started coming. And that was obviously awesome. Like I still serve on production when I can. And but I really, like, over these last couple of years, I've gotten to step into some like leadership opportunities, just really like building more community than I had in the first few years. Um, my walk has been interesting these last 7 years. It took, I would say that I like raised my hand at the end of service, that salvation prayer, probably a few months after I started coming to church. It wasn't another, I got baptized, actually. Should have mentioned this earlier. Today's my 5th birthday.
Oh, yeah.
And July 26, 2020. And yeah, I can say so much about that, but that day, it was COVID, July 26, 2020. It's North Haven Fairgrounds. Vox is doing revival nights, revival week, going around the state, outdoor services. So I gave my life to Jesus that night after like resisting the urge to get baptized multiple times in previous baptism services. to that night. I'm standing there, I'm alone. I didn't know there were going to be baptisms. The sky is like, I can't even describe. And I just felt the Holy Spirit like I never had before. Like, obviously, like, moved every Sunday to tears. Literally, people would tell me they saw me crying all the time. Like, but moved every Sunday. I never felt the Holy Spirit like I did that day. I felt a fire inside me, like physically, I was heating up inside. My feet started walking up to the stage, and I did just gave it all. But to be quite honest, right then and there, like, as beautiful as that is, like, I didn't give up some of my worldly desires. I didn't really start walking in purity. I didn't I was and I think, as I even sit here and reflect onto why, you know, I didn't have accountability, right? I hadn't tapped into deep enough into community, into close, mentorship or anything like that. So of course I'm like, what does this even look like to, like, walk, this walk, and do it the way God wants, um, and the way He intended. And so, yeah, I definitely stumbled over those next few years. Was in a worldly relationship, obviously not proud. Wish I could have changed that. And yeah, I guess we don't know what we don't know until it's revealed to us. So, really, it was, like 2 years ago, I guess I would say, when I really finally started to, like, pivot, and, like, that relationship ended, thank God. Um, I think one of the biggest reasons it ended was because I started, like, pressing on the faith conversation, and she wasn't that interested. And, like, I was like, well, this is not good. And so, yeah, God removed that from my life. And then so many other things that year. And so that's 2023. And that year, 2023, so much just new conviction and sanctification began to happen. Drinking, smoking, all these other things, and just, like, really finally starting to, like, walk like a true Christian. But of course, like, there's stumbles along the way, even when those things, like, started to stop, like, we grow stronger over time. And so last year, one of the most blessed things I've been part of was a leadership group, a leader circle, at Vox in Brantford, with the pastor, 12 guys, which obviously, like, the disciples, it was super special. And I'm so grateful for that group, because we walked through one of our pastor's books, and we read that together. And just, like, what that did for me, as far as, like, a new level of accountability, a new level of, like, mentorship, and just being poured into, as a leader. They saw something in me, like, even that I maybe didn't see in myself, or like, think like I was there, like, oh, I'm unqualified to be here, kind of thing. But yeah, they poured into me, my a lot of refinement last year, in who I am, and my understanding of God last year. And obviously that's continuing. I've had opportunities to, like, share my testimony at a men's breakfast last year. I'm on the prayer team now. At the end of services, go up and pray for others. And like I shared, I was in Puerto Rico on a mission trip. That was my second one in this past year. I went to Florida to help with hurricane relief last fall, and they asked me to lead that trip. So that was obviously a surprise. I'm like, you want me to? I've never done this before. You want me to lead a trip? Yeah, so it's been cool to just be seen as a leader, and, like, encouraged in that. And we obviously we still mess up often, and we
Yeah.
try to learn, and continue to grow. And some of the pastors are saying, like, hey, you're at the point now where you can start to bring others with you, and disciple others. And so I have a couple of community groups, and guys that I'm surrounding myself with, which I need to continue to build those relationships. Like, they're there, but, like, I allow the busyness of life to really get in the way sometimes. And so that's like my mission right now, is to continue to build those relationships that are making me better.
Are you ever mentoring or talking to like student athletes?
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, say the question again.
Yeah, I saw you ever like mentoring or talking to like student athletes.
Yeah. So, when you reached out, like, just it's confirmation, in a way that we're like here talking. And I think that it's something that I think the Lord definitely wants to do through me. I'm available, obviously. I met the baseball coach at Quinnipiac, or assistant baseball coach, who's involved at Quinnipiac and FCA. His name is Trey. Great guy, and he goes to Vox, and even a few months before that, me and my girlfriend Mona, we joined a team of people at Vox who like went during finals week to hand out like chips and Gatorade and stuff, and just bless people like during finals week, like with no other intention, just to bless them. And that was
Yeah,
so fun. Like being on campus, like for Jesus, I felt something there. She did too. And like we're like, how cool would it be to come back to Quinnipiac and just like share whatever it looks like, whatever the Lord wants to do. So that, and then like I saw, I don't know, I've been following like QCF, Quinnipiac Christian Fellowship, and I see that they meet like weekly up at Rocky Top. Like, I don't know, this fall I want to go and like pop in there and say hi, and like, and but as far as the student athletes go, 100%, I like I just see myself like in so much need, like when I was 18 to 21, for that kind of guidance. And 100%, I'm like open and willing for sure.
yeah. And what was one of the lessons you think you wish you learned when you were a student athlete to actually like truly walk as a Christian student athlete? Because like that wasn't typically your story in your 4 years.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of the people that you are talking to like are Christians as
Yeah.
as
Mhm.
athletes, right? I just know that it would have looked a lot different as far as obviously discipline. As a Christian, like you just have like this discipline that like it's not like others that are, in the world. And so what would that have looked like on a very tangible level? Not showing up hungover to matches. Um, not, I'll share this story just because I have before, and I'm not ashamed of it. It's just real. It's, I my first semester, freshman year, I missed the practice because I was late on a paper, but it's because I was hungover and I lost my phone. Like, just like painting this picture, and so what little respect as a freshman I had on my team was totally lost. Um, and then like literally like 2 weeks later, I'm trying to get my act together. Like we had a 7 a.m. bus to Yukon, and I got dressed at 5 a.m., sat in my chair by the door waiting for it to be time to go to the bus so that I'm trying to be on my A game. I fall asleep sitting straight up, fully dressed. My rackets are by the door. And so that was strike two, and that was enough. I missed the bus, and they said, you're suspended for the whole fall. Like, you know, and that was the way my college career started. And so from there, like they obviously didn't know who I was. Like, my mom even had a talk with the coach, was like, you don't know who he is yet. Like, you're gonna see, there's a leader there, there's character there, but like I hadn't proven it, and I totally like ruined what little respect I had, like I said.
Yeah.
It was an uphill battle, even from the beginning. And I just know that if I had even a sliver of the faith that I had now, a sliver of the discipline that I had now, not being distracted. I have ADD, and I think that just, so many options, so many things, so many like, distractions. Essentially, I just would have been a lot less distracted. I would have been more committed to school, of course, and of course, like, my sport. And being reliable for my team. There was a couple times there that I wasn't, and I just didn't know. I just didn't know. And what like a man of God looked like. And I didn't, one of the things I tell people is like, I didn't have that I didn't have an example really of that in my life. My dad is a great man, but we all fall short and of the glory of God,
Yeah.
yeah, just a lack of examples, lack of discipline, and it would have just made such a huge difference. Even the focus I think that I have now, with the mind of Christ, like I just like, it would have combated my ADD, which I have naturally, in the flesh, but it would have even increased my performance on the court. It would have improved my mental toughness. It would
Yeah.
have allowed me to focus when, I'm up 4-1 in the second set, ready to close out a match. And instead of going on a mental vacation and and closing out the match, no, I ease up, I relax, I like lose focus, and then I let the guy come back and I lose the match. It's like, just like, just mentally being sharper in all the ways. And then of course, like leaning on the Lord for strength and like, hey, this is to glorify you, through my sport,
Yeah.
playing for you, not for myself. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think you're the perfect person to ask this. Why do you think people who grew up Christian, they just fall off when it gets to college, especially as like a student athlete where like kind of that's your sport and like it's your sport, college, and that's it. Why do you think you just tailed off and just didn't feel the need to go to God?
Uh, Great question. Can you sort of phrase it one more time? Like did
Yeah,
I?
no, no problem. I'm like, why do you think those who grew up Christian, or at least in your time, where you grew up, you had all the God, you knew who God was, heard the story, but then went to college and completely falls off? Why do you think that was the trajectory, especially being like a student athlete for you specifically?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard it in many, testimonies where like, even a kid growing up Christian like decides like, oh, I'm gonna go to college, like I'm just gonna do it like
Mhm.
like everybody else. And and I can pick back up with God after. Like, and why is that? Why is that a thing? That's, obviously like I think when the gospel doesn't get deep enough, um yeah, you're more susceptible to the temptations. Like, Jesus was tempted like, by Satan, but like, you know what I mean? Like when, temptation is every day, but when you're not rooted, when, and so you can know of God, you can know the story, but if you're not rooted in your faith, if you're not in your word every day, like the enemy and all the distractions are coming for you. And of course, like, like in this world that we live in society, like what's normal seems not that bad. And that's like one of the enemy's favorite tactics is like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Like, yeah, eat of the apple. Yeah, no, it's not that bad. Like and so I think that was like it just wasn't a priority, which tells me now like it wasn't real enough. It wasn't real enough. Um, I've always been a deep thinker. Was always interested in psychology, philosophy, learning these things, learning all that stuff. But no, God's love wasn't real enough for me. I didn't know Jesus, and that's the missing thing. It's like, people may go to church growing up as a kid, whether they're Catholic or whatever else. Um, but it's Jesus. It's like if Jesus isn't your best friend and your savior, then it's going to be a hard slope in college. Yeah.
So what advice would you give a student athlete who wants to transition into being a Christian student athlete?
Hmm. Yeah. I think I think one of the biggest things we always need to do is like self-awareness, self-assessment constantly, right? Like we live in a society where everybody's always trying to, better themselves, and there's so many resources out there, and you're living under a rock if you're not like, you know, listening to today's motivational speakers and all that. And that's where it really all started before I like found Jesus, was like, oh, I'm like, it's like self-development, right? But I think it's to have like a true, honest conversation with yourself um about what really matters, right? College is 4 years. It's gonna be over in a blink of an eye. And I think as I look back, whatever we do in this life, whether you think you're called to be a father, whatever it may be, for me, that's the desire of my heart is to be a father. And I can't tell my kid, yeah, I'm proud of how I did college, or I'm proud of how I did that. And you know, God uses it. And I pray that, like, even through this, maybe getting involved in at Quinnipiac with the Christian community, like I can share that. But it's like, what really matters? What are your priorities? Asking yourself that, and what do you truly like doing all that you're doing for? And you have to, like, there's layers to it. Like, are you doing this for yourself? No, I'm doing this for my future kids, oh, that's noble. That's noble. Sure, you want to be a provider, and down the road, amazing. Like, that's biblical. Like, that's awesome. But at the end of the day, like, we're blind. Our pride blinds us to, doing things for ourselves and for our own glory. And so as a student athlete, like, yeah, you want to win all the matches, you want to, win, all 4 years, carry that trophy, right? What's it for? What are trophies for if our riches are in heaven? Like, that trophy, like, can burn in a fire, and it's gone, and what then? You just have your experience. But again, what's that for? Like, yeah, I think it's all to glorify God. And if we're not, then we're doing it for ourselves, and that's a dead end street.
So what are you doing now? What's or leadership roles that you're doing now, or any like projects you have in the future?
Hmm. Yeah, like I mentioned, serving at church, a couple, mission trips, prayer team. Uh, I was involved in the young adults a little bit, but I've sort of stepped away from that to actually get more involved in youth. So working with the middle school and teenage kids, because, like, I don't know, I didn't feel called to it for a while. And I don't know, then the Lord put it on my heart, like, and then the opportunity came to go on a winter retreat with them. They needed somebody this past February. I said, okay, I'll go. And I'm like, I'm not expecting like much, but like, I was moved to see like how on fire for the Lord these kids are, these 15-year-olds. And I'm like, dang, if I had that, like, when I was that age, it would be different. Yeah. And so, um, I'm really encouraged by that. That fulfills me a lot right now. And so, spending time, in the Word with these kids, and answering some hard questions, and all the wisdom I have now is obviously, from the Lord, or from, hard learned experiences. And so, yeah, every time I show up for that, it's like you're doing what, like, you would have needed from somebody then. And so it just feels so purposeful. As far as I mean, so yeah, a little bit of, like, my creative passion is like film and storytelling. I want to glorify God with that skill set and that passion. The conviction, came over these recent years, even with the projects that I have done, the couple of films I have done, that, like, what was that for? Like, where's God in it? And not that, like, I was crossing like lines, like, that I wouldn't show my kids the movie, but like, it's like, it's not really glorifying God. Like, it's not bringing people closer to God. It didn't bring me closer to God. It's like, so I'm thinking like long run, that skill set, I want to tell testimonies. I want to share with people like the love of God, share stories of people overcoming trials and yeah, just sharing testimonies. And the more people that I meet, essentially, the more testimonies I hear, the more stories I get to tell. And then I'm thinking like over time, God willing, if it's in his will, like there's going to be some specific testimonies that the Lord says you're going to make a movie about this one. So I might like do some like, I don't know, this is what I visualize now, some short films, some little short film testimonies. Again, just allowing people to be heard, having people be encouraged by others' testimonies. Like there's power in that. And then potentially like doing some films down the road with people's testimonies, most likely including mine.
I think that's just as important. Yeah, I relate to that so much because I'm in sports journalism. And it's like when choosing like this capstone, I'm like, it's like a world versus God. The idea of like, is this for me? Be on TV, do this, or is this for God? Which is why I wanted to do this series specifically of like the true like faith aspect, kind of combining faith and journalism together. The idea to just hear people's testimonies and just hear a blessing of like how God has moved people's lives. I feel like that's like I correlated 100% of like making sure what I'm doing is for God and not for myself. And I feel like this is when I do this, because like I knew it wasn't for me, where I was like, whether this capstone does well or not, it was just a blessing to be able to just talk to people and talk about God and hearing people's testimonies with God. So I knew that was like, this is what I would love to do every day. Just talk to people with their testimonies, let them share their story. And that's a blessing to be able to share your testimony, because you never know what someone else needed to hear, or if that's what God want. You were a vessel to someone else. So yeah, I hope that goes so well for you. That sounds like such a great.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And same for you. Obviously it's, when you said you were doing your capstone on this, like, I'm like, wow, thank God. Like there's people out here that are actually, wow. And at Quinnipiac, like I was like, wow, this is so encouraging. So yeah, that's exciting. What does the project, I guess, look like as a whole for you? Like what's that timeline and all that?
So it's honestly coming to an end. So it's like early August is when it's done. So it's gonna be like a YouTube series. So like each person is like an episode. It's gonna be like just intro, and just gonna be this. We're just seeing the conversation of what people have been saying. So I've been working on this since May. So it's been May to August has been this timeline of just talking to different student athletes, both current and former, and most of them Christian student athletes, like they start in college. So I love that your story was different, that yours was post your sport and also post college life. So I think that's also a really good testimony, because everyone's story is different. So that would be like forced, like it has to be in college. Like, no, you never know when God truly is going to reveal himself to you. Sometimes it takes those really, really tough times where it's like God really decides to humble you so he can reveal that you need him. So yeah, I really love that this was so much different than all the other stories that I've gotten so far.
No, I guess I'm glad, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
if I ask myself today, I'm like, no, I wish I was saved going into college,
Yeah.
but if God can use it, it's like, you know, that's where, I think as a kid, even like I was always trying to find meaning and stuff, right? And so like it's like, okay, well, Lord, have your way. If this is how it had to be for to glorify you, yeah. I definitely want to, with the upcoming school year, get involved with the Christian community over there. I noticed too, I was walking campus with Mona once, and she went to Quinnipiac too, actually. And we saw that in the CES, there's like a Catholic like,
Yeah, there's a Catholic.
yeah, like little chapel there now. So it's I don't know, it's just encouraging to see like the faith community at Quinnipiac starting to grow. It's like I don't think it was like that when I was there 100 years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
saying, was there no FCA when you were in college?
I mean, I feel like I would have known about it.
Yeah.
No?
But so
Or
you have got, would that have helped if there's an FCA, or do you think you still would be like, like go a few times, or would that have actually like truly helped you, like strictly?
honestly, great question. Yes, it would have helped. I think it would have. Um, I think it would have. I think I would have actually like, yeah, I think it's huge that it exists now. If it didn't then, not, don't quote me. I don't know when it started, but, um, it's, it's big because like, if you're not seeing it, if you're not like looking for it, like, then it's hard, right? But, I'm so glad that for the students there now and in the future that it's there and hopefully growing and,
Yeah,
um, yeah, yeah.
it is. Every athlete I've talked to, all of them associate, they all talk about FCA and
Wow.
how important that's been, how great it's been. And it's actually a good amount of people actually show up. So that's been really vital for a lot of them because when you have community, it's much better when you're fellowshipping with those who also want to do that versus always trying to do it isolation alone. It'd be really hard to continue. So yeah, FCA is
Yeah.
good for them from what I've heard.
And do they have like Bible studies and stuff like that outside of
Yeah.
that? You don't for that do that? Wow.
Yeah, like they have, like FCA is a whole different thing. That's like a Bible study where the baseball coach leads. And then there's also QCF, which is a whole different thing, not separate from FCA. And that's just athletes go to that as well, but also just regular students as well.
So cool. So cool. I can't wait to, yeah, tap in however I can,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. I'll reach out to Trey probably in the next couple months and just say, hey man, like, because we met at Night to Shine, which is a Tim Tebow Foundation event. And that was last year. And so yeah, yeah, I'm excited to see what's to come.
Okay, now before I let you go, I'm curious, you're talking to like teenagers, young people, what is like the main lesson you're giving to them, or even like what are like the main problems you like hear from them?
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, I think like the world, right, is, especially with these teenagers, right? Social media and everything is the first direction my thoughts go. The world is feeding us so much toxic uh content and norms, that it's about unlearning. It's about unlearning, like what does it look like? I'm not really sitting in small groups with like the girls, like they obviously split it up, guys and girls. So I get to spend time with the guys, and yeah, it's unlearning like what like it means to be a guy, like, in today's like society and what it looks like to be a man of God. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, these kids are growing up like in like Christian households. So, you know, I yeah, like I'd love to, spend more time with kids who have no idea who God is,
Yeah,
and see what their perspectives are there. But um, yeah, it's just like trying to point them in the right direction as far as like, what's not for you, and mental health being one of those big conversations now, of course. Speaking to kids with anxiety and depression and just obviously speaking life over them and just pointing them to lean on Jesus. Yeah, and I think one of the things I've learned from other leaders has of course been like, um leading with vulnerability, and these kids, right, they it takes time for them to trust you, um and you have to build up that relationship, and one of those ways that those walls come down is by leading with vulnerability. And so when you are sharing like your testimony and where you fell short and where you stumbled, like they see that and then they can open up. And so that's been one of the ways, just that like, hey, like we all need Jesus. Nobody is, holier than thou, more righteous, like, as Paul says, I am the worst of them all. Like and so sort of like adapting that approach to getting through to them, so that they can open up about struggles like mental health, um, yeah, like even like, yeah, sin struggles, lust, like, things like that like as young men, like, yeah, we gotta steer clear from, and it's everywhere we look, like I said, social media and all that media, the films, everything. So yeah, that's, I don't know, kind of broad in a nutshell, but of
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
course, of course.
Vulnerability, being able to share your story, and how it's not easy to be able to just talk to a stranger and tell them about how to change your life, but it's one of the callings to evangelize. So yeah, this has been really, really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm so just excited to see what you do with all this, and clearly, like, yeah, encouraged. Like, God is using you. Keep doing your thing. I'm sure he's gonna be glorified through whatever it is you're doing. So
Thank you for tuning into Faith in the Game with me, Judy Ingram. Hope you tune in to the next one.